All right, welcome back. Shifting gears, we now turn our focus to something every student experiences, but does not always talk about. The pressure to perform, succeed, and keep up. In the middle of all of this, how do we, as educators, parents, or mentors, help students stay confident, resilient, and kind to themselves? That's exactly what our next session, Teaching Self-Compassion and Growth Mindset in a High-Pressure World, will outline. Taking the stage for this conversation, our moderator, Dr. Scott Shaw, the Associate Provost at Grace Christian University, and our panelists. We have Adjunct Professor at Brandeis University, Robert Vetter, the CEO and founder of Robert Vetter Enterprises, LLC, Dr. Rena Lyons, the affiliate faculty at the Chicago School, Dr. Ezekiel Nelson, the metaphysician and body worker and psychologist at Heavenly Healing, Inc., Beth Gutzler, the lead community organizer at United Congregations of Metro East, and Valerie Suarez Guana, the director of outreach and engagement of New Mexico Junior College. All right, take it away.
All right, well, good afternoon. How's everyone doing? All right, it's the last session of the day. Hopefully everyone's okay with that. All right, I know it's been a full day. We'll just introduce ourselves. I'm Dr. Scott Shaw, Associate Provost and Accreditation Liaison Officer at Grace Christian University in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So I hail from the Eastern time zone. Some of us are feeling it, but great to be with you today.
My name is Valerie Onsudes-Gauna, and I work at New Mexico Junior College. I am here representing our NSEB camp, which is NMJC's STEAM enrichment program.
I'm Dr. Ezekiel Nelson. I am a psychologist and metaphysical doctor and a certified body worker. I'm from Wilmington, North Carolina, and here to help the world.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Rena Lyons. I am an affiliate professor at the Chicago School. I'm also the CEO of REBX3 Consulting. So it's very nice to meet you. I'm here by way of Chicago, but I work out of Dallas.
Hi, everybody. My name is Bob Vetter. I'm a cultural anthropologist, and my lifetime work has been at the intersection of healing and learning. And I've spent a lifetime taking traditional wisdom from non-Western cultures and bringing that into the classroom, whether I'm working with anywhere from pre-K up to graduate school or with teachers, to take these elements of wisdom, of real universal knowledge, and bringing it into the classroom to enrich students.
Right. Hello, everybody. Sean Milligan here. My day job is Director of Consulting Services for a software implementation company, but by night I'm an adjunct professor at Brandeis University.
All right, so our first question, and any of the panelists, but I might start with Sean, because I think he offered this question. Growth and compassion rarely develop in isolation, right? We do this as a community. So beyond individual reflection, how do we build learning environments where students can see that others share their struggles, their doubts, their successes? And why does shared visibility help in developing self-compassion and a growth mindset?
Yeah, so I look at this from, this is a little bit of maybe a unique lens, but I look at this from a lens of all of my courses are offered asynchronous and online. So online meaning online, and asynchronous meaning there's no activities that happen in a specific time. I'm not teaching lessons. I'm providing content and guiding students through. So it's a little bit that breeds almost some isolation, if you will, right? And so that visibility into that growth mindset and compassion can sometimes be a little blocked by the asynchronous environment. So I lean a lot on Daniel Pink and his writings about motivation with autonomy, purpose, and mastery. Autonomy, mastery, and purpose, sorry, reverse those last two. And so I like to build a lot of stuff into my courses that really drive that sense of the autonomy without community drives isolation, right? It's the opposite effect. And that mastery without some sort of witness loses meaning, and the purpose really needs some reflection to stick, if you will, right? And so I build a lot of activities that are team-based rather than just discussion forums. I build a lot of activities that are team-based, where they're solving intentional challenges together. They're coming up with solutions collaboratively. They're witnessing each other's growth. They're witnessing each other's vulnerability. I also lean on, if you're familiar with Kristen Neff, an educational psychologist, she talks about common humanity and how struggle is not shameful, right? It's community. It's how we help each other. And so I do a lot of reflection journals too that are public facing that allow students to kind of witness each other's vulnerabilities and successes, which kind of leans toward that, okay, there's some compassion, they're solving problems with each other, it almost becomes like social media, if you will, because they see these challenges, they see these things, these activities, et cetera, and they almost crowdsource with each other. And so they witness these things that are going on and that growth and that compassion. I think sometimes we see a growth mindset as something that's developed internally. And I actually think it's a social construct. I think that we have to make that visibility intentional in what we do so that they are witnessing vulnerabilities, successes, collaboration, et cetera, and really making that into that construct.
If I can piggyback off of him, so Carol Dweck with the growth mindset and fixed mindset, when it comes to different things, she touches on that, especially in the education department. In her recent TED Talk speech and in her books, she talks about how she went into a impoverished school where everybody felt that these students were not the best of learners, and she switched their mindset. And when she switched her mindset, and I know from New Mexico, so you may know this well in the school districts, but when she switched the mindsets of those students and allow for them to believe in themselves by pushing them and saying, you're awesome at what you do.
Right.
You all came in and you are all A students. You're perfect. Like, this is the best class. They grew. So when we're talking about that mindset, what you were just saying took me straight to Carol Dweck's teachings that she does on that fixed and growth mindset. So you are absolutely right. It is a construct that we need to push into our students more.
Yeah.
I love that you brought that up.
I like to just say, I'm kind of a rebel. So I do get it as far as the communal side of things, because we do learn from each other. We do understand the reflections of each other, how we are reflections of each other in some form or fashion. So children can be able to grow by seeing what the others are doing. But I also like the solemn set mindset too, because if a child is going through, dealing with other children, some children just need that time to be alone so they can process whatever it is that they either went through, if they were bullied, or if they were, if they have certain friends that's treating them a certain kind of way, they may need something to process, but not process too secluded, right, because then their minds start going everywhere. So be able to be reinforced by a positive group, a positive, teacher or parent, whatever, that don't worry about, yes, you may have this much time to go through what you're going through, but like you said, you're still awesome. You know what I'm saying? You still got it going on. You're still, whatever type of affirmation you can give them and teach them to affirm that they are good, that they are safe, they are loved. You know what I'm saying? Then that can push them to continue to grow also, and more look inward that, forget what everybody else say. I got this support. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'd like to share, I'm very excited about our INSET program because we've expanded from juniors and seniors to now elementary age, and then this year will be the first year we're moving into junior high. But the pilot program, and the program that has received probably the most attention, is where we have juniors and seniors, and we prepare them for college. And we have students of all backgrounds. So whether you are underserved, whatever that might mean in your area, or you come from an affluent family or well-educated or not. But what we see is that students, we keep it intimate, so it's no more than 20 students, but they come and they have a very immersive experience at the college, and we stay with them for a full week, and they're able to experience college and or what it would be like. And obviously it's the STEAM programs, and we will have students who are very shy, very reserved, I can't do this. And now having so many of them that have become college ambassadors, or I've even had a couple of students say, if I wouldn't have come and done this, I wouldn't have believed in myself. And yes, you know, it's the words of affirmations, but what we have found is because it's such an immersive experience, and we invite students from all over the area. In fact, I just met somebody from Virginia, and I said, have your daughter come and join us. But these students are going through it together, and then they're realizing it doesn't matter what color, what background, what education, even what I think I'm going to do. We've had students who come and they might not take traditional classes, but they're a part of our workforce. But what we have seen is just this community, the cohorts, students that were traditionally maybe very athletic are making friends with students that are traditionally maybe more reserved or into video games. And this experience is kind of this big push into the deep end, but I think they are finding that growth with each other, and when they're struggling, they feed off one another in order to help. They kind of end up realizing how much of a leader they are, whereas they might not have had that experience in their traditional setting.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to share a cultural perspective on this, and I think it will come out of something called two-eyed seeing, which is a term that was created by a Micmac elder to describe what it's like to have one foot in regular American culture and another one in an indigenous cultural perspective, and how we can combine those two. And what it brings to mind is some of the work that I do with young children, where we talk about in Native American communities prior to the arrival of Europeans, that there were two main ways that children learned what they needed to know. So instead of going to school, most of their learning took place through playing games and listening to stories. So through stories, they learned the teachings, they learned the values, they learned what life should be all about and how to live a good life. And through the games, they learned a very healthy combination of cooperation and competition. And I think that's really what we're talking about here, that we live in a highly stressful world where we need to be able to compete. But the problem that we face is when we do that in isolation. When I experience failure, and rather than having a support network around me to tell me that it's safe to experiment, it's safe for me to make mistakes, it's safe for me to learn from my failures, instead of that, and especially in an age of standardized testing, what happens? When I fail, it becomes internalized. It becomes my identity. I'm a failure. I don't work well in school. Instead of school being an environment where I can make mistakes, where I have the support of my teachers, where I do perhaps project-based learning so that mistakes can be shared. Whether it's a victory or whether it's a failure, it's shared by the group instead of all of that weight going on one individual. So that's why I think that one of the things that we need to look at in education is how to bring relationship back to the way that we interact with one another and the way that we are able then to compete.
One of my favorite aspects of growth mindset is the power of yet.
Yes.
You know, I'm not good at math, mic drop, right? The final word, that's it. Game over. I guess I'm just going to put puzzles together and read storybooks. Well, no, we have to learn, right? I teach at the college level, and I also teach statistics. And a lot of the students come in and they just say, I'm not good at math, I'm not good at stats. Mic drop. It's like, no, of course not. You say, I'm not good at statistics yet. But you're going to be, because of two things. You're here to learn, and I'm a really good teacher. So that's a winning team. But if we can build that growth mindset with the power of yet, you know what? You're going to learn this. What young child is good at math? What 2-year-old is great at trigonometry? Like,
Right.
No, of course not. What 4-year-old can read, advanced? No. But yet kind of frames it in a perspective that, but I will be able to do this. And I love being able to build those relationships and saying, but you're going to do this. This is important. I believe in you. And that's part of that balance between kind of framing the self-compassion and growth mindset, that it's kind of a polarity that, you are special just the way you are, right? You're not lacking in anything, and you're capable of so much more. And that's why I'm here to help challenge you and encourage you in that process.
Yeah.
How would, this is to the panel, what are some ways that we can frame growth mindset and or self-compassion in this process of working with students? Anyone can jump on. Oh,
I'll go first. Sorry. I'll jump in because I want to piggyback off of what you said and what you said with the not yet. Framing that growth set. Failure, I always like to say to people, what did you learn? It's not really a failure if you didn't learn anything from it. Personally, it took me a long time to really get to that point where, to me, failure was not an option. I always felt like I needed to be perfect at everything. But as I got older and then as I became a mom, children will change your mindset for real, but it was, what did you learn? And did you reach your goals? Or what do you need to get to that growth? Which ties into your emotional intelligence. Being self-aware of who you are, how your reactions create a reaction out of other people, how you can change, what are your relationship building skills, and how can you just flourish with that? So I agree with both of you guys with the not yet mindset. I can't do it, but not yet. We get that a lot in graduate school with students, so I agree with you. And then I agree with you as well when you were talking about failure. What did we learn from it? Failure is not a bad thing. And I agree that schools need to incorporate that more and not focus so much on testing. Focus on that growth. One of my best friends is a elementary school teacher and a 5th grade teacher. And when she shared with me that her bilingual students, who everybody had just shunned away, like these students can't speak English, their test scores are not going to be high. She was so proud when she came in, and this is her first year in that school district, to come in and say, my students have out-tested all of the monolingual students. My students have tested the highest in the district, and super excited. And we looked at the data, because yes, I'm not a stats person, but I love data. We looked at it, and it was just, I said, well, what did you do? And she said, I allowed for them to fail. I allowed for them to have that growth mindset of, I can do this. And what she realized and what we walked away with was, they've always been told, you're not good at this. You're not going to learn this. You have a learning disability. So what happens when you tell people they're not good at something or they're not going to grow?
They believe it.
You said it in there. Now they self-identify with, why should I learn this? Or why should I do this? Because no one's going to believe in me. But when you put that affirmations, as you were saying, Ezekiel, and all of that effort into those students, she's a perfect example with her data that shows it. She took a low-scoring group of students, and now she is the #1. Her class is #1 in the entire school, and everybody is asking her, how did you do this? And it was through love, compassion, and believing in her students' ability, and changing that mindset from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset of, I can learn 2 languages, I can grow, and even with these standardized testing, it's fun. She made testing fun for her students.
And to add to that,
yeah.
she also had to believe in herself to do
She did.
it. You know what I'm saying? And I believe that giving the child the understanding of not saying try. Because a lot of times we've carried I'm trying all the way from our childhood to adulthood. And so, well, I'm trying to get this. And I tell people, when you try something, first, it gives you a way out for failure. Secondly, you're giving yourself a trial, because you're constantly saying, I'm trying, and so forth. And so if you give the understanding to that child and to the adult that there is no try, there's only do or do not. So you don't try to drive, well, if you don't know how, but let me change that analogy. Well, the things you know how to do, you don't try to do. You just know how to do it. But the premise of it is, give them the understanding that you can do whatever it is you set your mind to do, and having that encouragement, and great things happen such as that, because now they start believing in themselves. I used to mentor several children, and that's one thing I would always tell them. I would like you said, I would give them the opportunity to fail. Let them fail. Let them complain about it. Let them talk about it. Let them get it out of the system. And then ask, well, what's the lesson behind it? What did you learn from it? And they'll tell you what they learned from it. And then, all right, what you going to do now? Are you going to dwell on that, or are you going to move forward? You see the problem. What's your solution? And you let them think. Let them figure it out, because they have a mind to do so, what I'm saying? So let them figure out their own situation, because it's their path, basically. And when they do, they're the ones that becomes proud of themselves, and you become proud of them. And you're a sucker. You didn't try to do this, do that, do. No, you just sat back and you watched them grow.
I would say, too, it's hard to, the term frame a growth mindset is kind of challenging for me, because a frame implies borders, right? And just like every aspect of education, everybody's idea of a growth mindset is different, right? Someone's growth mindset could be the 1% every day or every month or every quarter or whatever that may be. Some people's view of it could be the moon landing, right? That's the growth mindset, right? And there's all that in between. Some may say failure is not an option. Some may say failure is always an option. What do I learn from it, as you stated? So I think a certain amount of it has to also be through observation. And I hate to keep going back to community and social construct and stuff, but there's a lot to be said about that, the visibility into others' growth and others' sense of vulnerability in that growth, et cetera, that has to be observed to a certain extent. How many, I know it's this weird reference, I promise I'm going somewhere with this. How many have seen March of the Penguins?
I have seen.
And how many have finished March of the Penguins and gone, what a magical journey. How did they learn that? Right? It's through observation, not really anthropologic, did I say that? Anthropologically. But it's more of it's an observation, and I mean, we know they're communicating, but there's a lot of observation in that process to make that magic journey and know what to do and know not what to do, and see others failing and picking those up and allowing them to fail and allowing them to be vulnerable. That's all learned, and so I think there's a certain level of observation, guided observation, if you will, right? We need to help folks along with identifying their growth mindset and framing it, to use the term, right? But we have to allow some observation, but guided observation, I think.
And I'll talk a little bit about what I think we can describe as modeling behavior on the part of a teacher in the classroom, because what we want to see students do largely, the outcome of it is largely what the teacher demonstrates. And I can't tell you how many times in going into the classroom that I'll see teachers who expect one thing of their students, but they don't deliver on the same thing themselves. So we have to have that kind of consistency. And it makes me think also about, in traditional societies, you didn't have a teacher who was hired. You had a relative.
Right.
So there was something relational that went on in learning. So how do we create that relatedness when we're in the classroom? Part of it is that old-time job of the elder, which was to find out what was inherent in that child. And it brings me back to the original meaning behind the word education. We have kind of an idea of education now as how much information can I stuff into this person? Whereas the original meaning behind it was the word educare, which means to draw out. So it's the idea that we have something inherent in each one of us. And a teacher has in my opinion, the responsibility to help to draw that out. That job of the elders was to look, to perceive something in that child that could come out and would actually benefit the entire community. And I'm here to say that I think that's what we as teachers are here to do as well, to model what we expect of our students and to find everything that is worth developing in them.
I like that approach, I really do, because it is natural, it is ancient and so forth. And I think that as teachers, that it would be good to be that model for them, but also to encourage the parents to also be that model, because a lot of times we can be that for them, but then they go back to an environment where they don't get it. And so even though they spend and then to make it even smaller, it's only in our class. You know what I'm saying? So it's like we can encourage the parents, encourage the relatives, whoever they're being raised by, to be able to reinforce what we're giving them. And then they can always be in that mindset and in that type of environment. So thank you for that.
I don't mean to just talk about the camp, but that is my experience of, 6 to adults. Has anyone in this room or anyone on the panel gone skydiving before?
Oh, no.
You have?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I'll ask you then, because I've heard, and I wish to do it, so it's on the bucket list. I've heard from folks who've gone skydiving, they say, you're nervous, your heart's racing. Unless you're just someone that doesn't scare you. But there's that excitement, that kind of fear, hesitation. Was it your experience that, from what I've heard, once you jump, you feel the peace, the calmness, the excitement, it just feels different when you're in the plane versus when you jump out?
The world slows down. For sure. And I know that sounds weird because you're plummeting toward the earth, but that, and if you do it commercially, you're talking maybe 15 seconds of free fall before the chute opens, et cetera. But that 15 seconds feels like an hour. And when you hit the ground, not hit the ground, when you successfully land.
You're still here with us.
When you successfully land, you kind of see the world differently too. I know that sounds, life-changing and all that, but it really is. You kind of view things a little bit differently. So yeah, I would agree.
So I asked that question because I want to do that, and I want to be of that group where you're on the other side of it. And so with the INSET camp, and I've seen it happen with the high school group of students, but especially now last year, I would say I was very hesitant because I said, that's not my group, that's not my people, I don't want to be a teacher, and that's, but, we wanted to expand the program, and we did, and I'm so happy. But to see, especially the littles, as I call them, how nervous they are to come in, and it's not their teacher, and you're only going to be with them for 1 or 2 days. And we do ask parents, we allow them, but I said, we would prefer you don't stay here. Your kids go to school, but I don't know. And to see the excitement, and I even had one very little girl say, can we not come back tomorrow? And I said, no, that's it. But I imagine it must be very similar on the other side of that jump. And so for them, maybe, I know for me, it was observing them and seeing this was a big leap for them. And we do have them have a lot of fun, and they're running around, and there's serious times, and there's all of this. But as I'm listening to the growth mindset, I feel that students can also sense when you are disingenuous. And it's not to say that you can't have a bad day, but if you are passionate and you are excited, and even on the days you're having a crummy one, if they feel like you care, and I know that's we say that all the time, they'll care if you care, but understanding that this is their first time too. And sometimes maybe we have forgotten what it was like to be in those shoes, but that genuineness, I think, really resonates with students, and understanding, this is like jumping out of a plane for them. And if we can make this as exciting, and then, then the peace and the calmness will come, the world will slow down. And if they feel that you really care, I think that students really respond to that, and you're going to grow with them, and they're going to sense if you're nervous. So if you can kind of, then they're going to also say, okay, this is a safe place for me to grow. And then I have found that they will lead each other.
I was going to say, what you're talking about is servant leadership and leading with values. So it doesn't just apply to students. It applies to adults too in corporate America. And I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of my corporate America experience, but the same thing applies. If you are boots to the ground, your team follows. If you lead with example, and mostly I spend most of my day talking to adults saying, you set the tone for the rest of the day, you set the tone for your team. The same thing applies for the students. When I walk into the classroom with my graduate students, and yes, I call them kids, but they're all adults. They're working on masters and PhDs. I know that I set the tone, and I know that my story resonates with them. This is the journey I went through. This is what it took to get here. This is my experience. What's the story you're going to make? That's what you make me think of as being that servant leader. So I really do feel like your program, what you guys are doing, you guys are actually servant leaders, and you're teaching our next generation to be those boots to the ground servant leaders just through the immersive experience that you're talking about. So I love that. Thank you.
And I love this too, as being in a room with change makers of education. You guys are the high power, high octane leaders that are changing lives, and our panel too. And but what I tell my students is find a mentor, whether it's a teacher or a professor or someone that gives you a new frame. We were talking social constructivism is what came to mind too with servant leadership. If I know someone who's doing this, right? Maybe I'm the first person to go to college in my family, or the first person to be the first doctor in my family, right? Having a mentor or someone that, okay, you've been here, you've done that, maybe I can do that too. And the fact that this person actually cares about me in a mentoring type relationship, that's incredibly powerful. Yeah. Because it humanizes that experience of feeling like, can I do this? And I think that's that tie-in with growth mindset, that I can't do it yet, but I know people that have been there, done that, got the t-shirt, and they care about me, are invested in my growth. That's exciting, or it can be.
Yeah, just one real quick thing, just to tie onto the servant leadership train. I intentionally, I always learn from my students every single time I interact with them, and I intentionally call that out with them, because I do believe that at any age, right, if I'm the learner, or if I'm the teacher, or whatever that may be, we're always learning from each other. And so I intentionally call that out, and I find it's very effective in kind of bringing out that, wow, professor said I did something great, and professor said I learned. And not that I'm any great mind, but there's just that sense of like there's a vulnerability there in me that also creates a vulnerability in them, which is.
And to tie in with that, I think it's important that the mentor or the teacher expresses their own vulnerability, because a lot of times a child or an adult learner, for that matter, may put somebody else up on such a high pedestal that they say, well, I could never live up to that. But if a teacher is willing to express their vulnerability, then the person learning, the mentee or the student, says, oh, okay, well, they went through that. They faced their own challenges. They didn't start out perfect, so maybe there is hope for me.
As an example of what I just said, I used to mentor a young man. I've been mentored him for about 8-9 years. And we had gotten into a discussion one time when saying being vulnerable and being truthful with them, because they can tell when you're lying. And I asked him one time, I said, why do you respect me? Why do you even trust me the way that you do. He said, because Mr. Z, you do what you say that you're going to do. Everybody else in my life, they say they're going to do something and they don't. You do what you say. So it's like, you have to definitely, if you're going to promise the child something, make sure that you follow up and do what you say, because they'll hold that. They'll hold that the rest of their lives, and they won't trust you. And if they can't trust you, then they can't be vulnerable with you. And then there's a blockage there, so.
All right. Well, how do we help students move from self-criticism to something more constructive without losing motivation or accountability? There's that dynamic tension. We care, we support, you're growing, and I think we have 5 hours left. So without losing motivation or accountability.
Will there be an open bar or?
I have a very short example. So for the juniors and seniors, they're about to get into college. We want them to be prepared. And so being punctual is something that's important, especially because some professors at different universities, you're late, they shut the door and you've missed the whole class. So in the mornings, we get up and I stay, myself and a teammate, in the dorms with them. We are experiencing all of it. And I tell them, if you're late, you might have to do something that might not be as I think it's fun. We do it with them. But for example, we'll have them, sing the national anthem or something. And, you don't want to be put in that spot. And so I've had students in the past, and of course we let them know if you're sick, if you're, life happens, we're not going to punish you. And that's not meant to be a punishment. It's something silly, but I think holding students to account sometimes isn't easy, but doing something where, okay, it's quick, but we still made sure that and you're not in trouble, and we go on. Usually it only takes one, and then everyone is on time the whole week after that. But I think making sure that you do something to hold whomever to account. Otherwise, it's just a lack of communication.
Mm-hmm. It's like you can be disciplined with them and give them and let them know, this is what you gotta be held accountable for. I love you. I'm here for you and everything, but I'm only disciplining you because this is what our agreement was. You know what I'm saying? And you haven't held up to that part, so this is the consequence. But there's still much love for you, and I know you can do better. So forth.
And to piggyback on that, in returning to this theme of relationship and relatedness, I would describe this as loving accountability. Yep. Meaning that if that strong feeling of relationship is there, then the accountability becomes something that is mutual. That I want to be responsible for myself, and I want to respond to the expectations that somebody else has placed upon me in the context of relationship.
I also think that that dynamic tension, like you talked about, the discipline and the, I'm sorry, what was the word you used? And the accountability, discipline and accountability. You said earlier, failure is not an option. I've always, that term and I don't get along very well because we all fail, right? We have all failed in some aspect of life, profession, education, whatever that may be. I actually have an assignment in I'm teaching a project and program management program. Sorry for the redundancy, but one of the assignments is actually a time management assignment where the impossible is put in front of the students, and it's actually impossible. There is no way to solve. And 3/4 of the way through the week, I tell them that. But they're required to show their work, that they went through the process of the discipline of going through the work, doing the assignment. You're not going to be, you're not eventually evaluated on whether you got the right answer. You're evaluated on, did you identify the things that were like, this is impossible, right? Did I show my work? Did I get through that? And I think that drives a little bit of that. There's a discipline there, but there's also the accountability on my sense to say, there's no way you can do this, right? Congratulations for trying and building on your growth as a project manager. I know that sounds cruel. I'm really not that cruel.
You want to bring us home?
I'm not going to bring us home, but I will open it up for some questions before we get kicked off.
I think we're down, how many minutes left?
30 seconds. We are done.
We're done, okay.
Guys, this is what happens when you put a lot of highly educated individuals on the stage. We really could have gone for 5 hours.
Well, thank you so much, everyone.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.